Good evening, wanderers. Quick check before we begin. If a door in Krakow promised Paris when you turn the handle, would you step through? Hold that impulse and keep a hand on the banister. You're listening to Somnolent Conspiracies, where we say hello properly, invite you to think with us, and pull mysteries apart without losing the thread. The case sits above the Vistula in a Renaissance castle. A curator marketed a marvel he called the Atlas, a corridor of oak doors, each door opening to a room in another city. Not paintings, not headsets, walk-in spaces with foreign air, far-off traffic sounds, the exact smell of spices or diesel. Crowds loved it. Critics muttered about tricks. Then a restorer died in a supposed fall. A journalist vanished after a night tour, and the curator himself was found with his neck broken. Every path circled back to the Atlas corridor. We won't lean on magic. We'll count hinges and ducts, feel drafts, and track where a hidden stair goes when the public map pretends it isn't there. We'll look for twin rooms that were built in rented flats abroad, for synchronized videos that pretend to be windows, and for the one door that failed the show and revealed the hand behind it. Ready? Breathe. Cities each have their own air. Listen to what this one says when a latch clicks. Part 1, the corridor that promises elsewhere. They brought Detective Anya Biel to the castle before the crowds. Dawn hadn't lifted from the Vistula yet, and the limestone kept the nights chill like a vault keeps coins. The Atlas wing was locked behind a velvet rope and a sign. Tasteful, serifed, multilingual. Announced, phones prohibited beyond this point. Below it, someone had taped a smaller notice with impatient tape. Exhibit closed until further notice. Until further notice, Anya said, and the phrase steamed in the cold air. She raised a hand to the latch. The guard beside her, Raffle, broad-shouldered, clean uniform, breath sharp with coffee, unhooked the rope and thumbed the security pad. The lock coughed and opened. The corridor ran straight, paneled in oak so richly oiled that it drank the light. 10 doors on each side, each with a plaque engraved in brass. Paris, Tokyo, Marrakesh, London. The hall sconces were fitted with bulbs behind frosted glass, warm and steady, and beneath their glow the wood shone like the interior of a violin. The floor was stone at the center, but each threshold carried a tongue of hardwood that crossed the stone like a bridge. The door handles were lions' mouths, polished by many hands. "Don't touch the brass," said Lydia, the technical director, keeping 2 paces behind. She had a notebook tucked under one arm, knuckles chafed, hair pulled back so tight that her face was a clean geometry of bones and displeasure. "There's residue on some of them. I want a swab before the lab gets here." "I'll touch what I need," Anya said, not unkindly. She had the habit of looking at everything twice, the way one looks at faces in a crowd, cataloging noses, ears, the little asymmetries that later turn out to matter. The Atlas corridor asked for that kind of patience. It was a promise, and promises had seams. "You'll want to start with Paris," said Teo, the sound and video man. He hovered with the guilty energy of a student waiting outside a principal's office. "It's the cleanest demonstration of the concept." "Or we begin with the dead," Anya said. 3 bodies and a disappearance. "Walk me through those first." They walked. "Marta Trzaska," Raffle recited, as if he had done so many times. "Restorer. She worked with the panels and frames, doing fine repairs. Fell 2 weeks ago. The public story is that she fell from the mezzanine stairs above the Naples room. Broke her neck." Teo flinched at the word story, but said nothing. "Public story," Anya repeated. "Meaning there is a private one." Lydia's mouth thinned. "Meaning the curator had a way of simplifying things for donors. He liked easy narratives and theatrical statements." "Curator," Anya said. "Janusz Rona." The name hung there. Even the bulbs seemed to hum more loudly. "Janusz Rona," Lydia confirmed. "He sold the Atlas to the board. He is also dead." "On a stair," Raffle said. "This time that is true. The main stair, between the Atlas wing and the administrative offices. No witnesses. A fall. Broken cervical vertebrae." Anya nodded. "And the disappearance." "Pyotr Nowak," Teo said quickly, too quickly. "Journalist." He was given a private tour for a feature piece. He walked with Janusz and me. He stepped into Tokyo. He did not step back out. Phones banned, Anya said, glancing at the sign again. Lydia made a small, brittle noise. It's an art experience. Phones kill attention. They also record when people go in and who doesn't come out, Anya said. So, no phones. What about cameras? In-house only, Raffel said. We have control of the feeds, for security and for intellectual property. Anya held out a hand. I'll need everything. Raw feeds, maintenance logs, network logs, usage schedules. Lydia hugged her notebook tighter. They're in the office. I'll get you what I have. Good. Anya let her hand drop. She stepped to the door with Paris on its plaque. This one, then. Show me what people paid to see. Raffel worked the handle. The door swung open on oiled hinges and expelled a breath of air that carried cafe bitterness and baked sugar. Not the pastry itself, something like its memory. A low wash of traffic noise answered, a distant siren rising and falling like a tide. Above, a ceiling panel that pretended to be a skylight diffused a blue-white light with the fatigue of morning. Step, Teo said. Just one. Feel it. Anya placed her boot on the tongue of hardwood that bridged the threshold. The wood sloped almost imperceptibly downward at the last inch, a sensation so slight it could be mistaken for a heartbeat. Beyond the threshold, the floor became a different wood, a warmer hue, boards running in a different direction, as if a carpenter in another country had done the job. The room itself was not large, perhaps 4 meters by 5, but the illusion pressed wider than its walls. A window, no, a screen dressed as a window, showed a corner of an avenue where a line of motorbikes idled by a curb. A church rose beyond, very slightly out of focus, as if looking through glass that had been handled by many fingers. The scent is a blend, Lydia said, almost despite herself. Burned coffee notes, anise, diesel. The light color temperature shifts according to the time of day channel. The air pressure changes when the door opens to suggest exterior drafts. And what is behind the window? Anya asked. A screen aligned to frame lines. Some light sensors for sync. A black wall behind. Teo managed a small smile. You see it. I see the trick, Anya said. Tricks can be beautiful, but I see it. She moved to the Tokyo door. The plaque's letters were set deeper, and the lion's mouth latch had a burnish on the lower lip where rings had knocked it. She did not open it. Not yet. She looked down. Just inside the threshold, the hardwood tongue caught a ridge on its edge. Small, a scuff that hadn't been sanded out. A darker smudge nestled in the grain, near where a heel might pivot. She crouched and breathed out, fogging the lacquer, then wiped with a gloved thumb. The smudge was grease, thin and dark. Maintenance yesterday? She asked. No scheduled work, Lydia said. Anya stood. She turned in place, taking in each door like a face at lineup. The hall had a draft, and it did not come from any single room. It rose and fell with a rhythm that did not match the HVAC. It sighed in from one end of the corridor, then fled out some gap invisible to the eye. She felt it touch her hairline like cold fingers. The oak panels were snug, too snug to hide gaps, and yet the draft spoke of behinds. Service runs, chases, shafts. Where does the air go when the doors are shut? She asked. Return vents, Lydia said. Discreet. The system is balanced. Balanced, Anya said softly. We will test that. They stood in Marrakesh next. The floor had been dusted with a fine layer of sand that did not cling to boots. The smell carried cumin and sun-warmed stone, lifted by a fan that hummed like bees. Somewhere far off, a muezzin's call wound through alleys that did not exist here. Imported? Anya asked, nudging the sand with the toe of her boot. Local, Lydia admitted. Sieved and perfumed. True sand from elsewhere is full of trouble. Pests, pollen, customs declarations. You can give people what they expect without importing it. Expectation, Anya said, tasting the word. The most dangerous tool in a human hand. They returned to the corridor. The light beyond the frosted sconces had lifted a shade toward morning. Through a slit in the drapery at the far end, the first paler strip of day showed like a scar across the horizon. Anya could feel the castle fine-tuning itself around them, the way an old ship creaks and settles as the sea changes. "Tell me about the nights," she said. "Nights are private tours," Raffel said. "Donors, press, academics. Fewer people. Easier to control. Easier to hide," Anya said. "Marta's fall was after hours?" Lydia nodded, eyes fixed on something beyond the past. Janusz called it an internal rehearsal. He wanted the transitions quicker. He wanted to push throughput. She argued about a brace that wasn't set. I told him the goods lift was running hot. He said we'd tune it later. She fell. The story was the mezzanine. But, Anya did not let the word hang long enough to become an alibi. Lydia swallowed. "We didn't see her fall. There are blind angles in the service ring," he said. Janusz said. "It would panic the board if we mentioned hidden corridors while they were still selling an immersive miracle." Anya looked at Raffel. "And you?" "I follow orders," he said. "I keep guests safe." "2 dead and 1 missing," Anya said. "Your ledger is not safe." Silence collected in the hall. Even the far-off fan through the Marrakesh door seemed to hold its breath. Anya took a radio from her coat and keyed it. "This is Biel. The Atlas wing is sealed as of now. No staff will enter without my permission. Post guards at both ends of the corridor and the service stair by the west tower. Power down non-essential systems. Keep the emergency lights and the environmental controls, but I want the feeds duplicated to an external drive immediately." She released the key. The radio answered with the small electric sound of compliance. "We're closing the show," Teo said weakly. "You're closing the accidents," Anya said. "If the rooms are a trick, the trick sits on machines and cables and human hands that tire and make mistakes. We will count the hinges. We will feel where the draft goes. We will find where the map lies." She stepped back from the doors, away from the lion mouths and their polished lips, and the corridor seemed to retreat with her, as if it, too, understood it was under oath now. Somewhere beneath the floor, something ticked once. Metal hitting metal and then was quiet. Anya set her notebook on her palm and wrote a single line. "If the rooms are a trick, they need power, ducts, routes. Find them." She dotted the last period harder than she meant to, leaving a small puncture in the page. Then she slid the notebook into her pocket and turned. "Show me the map of the service corridors," she said. "The real one, and then we'll take apart your miracle." Part 2, How a Room Pretends to be a City. They began with measurements, not theories. Anya believed in numbers the way sailors believe in stars. Not because they explain the sea, but because they get you home. In a rolling case taken from the forensics van, she had an anemometer, a handheld VOC analyzer, a color meter for light temperature, a cheap carpenter's level, adhesive lifts, pollen traps, a decibel reader, and chalk. Lydia watched the array with a grudging respect, as if someone had unpacked the vocabulary of her private language. "Paris first," Anya said. Raffel keyed the door. The cafe bitter air exhaled again. Anya set the VOC analyzer humming. Its little screen began to populate with peaks. "Burnt phenolics, anisaldehyde," Lydia said, unable to stop herself. "We macerate star anise and coffee grounds and cook them down with a resin binder. We spike the diffuser with minute diesel volatiles. People think they love pastry. They love anise and exhaust." The analyzer agreed, notes clustered where Lydia said they would. Anya moved to the anemometer and held it just inside the jam while Raffel eased the door back toward its frame. Wind speed rose a hair, then dropped, then rose again when the door was a hand's breadth from shut. "Draft time to the door swing," Anya said. "Warm air pulse," Lydia replied. 2 seconds at open, 1 at close. Your fingers feel what your eyes expect. The color meter told its own small truth. Over the skylight, the light ran cool, 6,500 Kelvin. Morning glass. In the corridor sconces, the bulbs glowed at 3,000. Cross the threshold and you were in another sun. "Timed to an external feed?" Anya asked, eyes still on the meter. "Usually," Teo said, But we keep loops ready for weather mismatch. Anya looked up. The knot window showed scooters and a church facade and a strip of sky with skinny clouds like fish bones. A woman's shadow cut across the glass as if someone passed with a baguette out of frame. The sound of traffic drifted. A horn peeped twice. A truck coughed. "Clap," Anya said. Teo blinked. "What?" "Clap." He clapped, awkward and loud. She waited. The room gave nothing back. "Flat acoustic," she noted. "The brain forgives that when the eyes are fed." She chalked a tiny X on the tongue of hardwood at the threshold and set the carpenter's level over it. The bubble slid off-center, then hit itself again when she nudged the board with a finger. 3mm tilt, she said. "Just enough to cheat your weight. You don't notice it. Your bones do." They crossed to Marrakesh next. The door gave them cumin and sunshine, a fan's bee hum, the whiff of warm stone that didn't exist. The sand was thin as a veil and refused to cling to boots. Anya pressed an adhesive lift onto the grains, peeled it back, sealed it in a bag, labeled it. She set a pollen trap on the skirting, a silly-looking little box with a sticky pad. "Local?" she asked without turning. "Local," Lydia said. "We perfume and bake it dry." The board loved the sand. Kids squeal when it shifts underfoot. It reads authentic, even when it isn't. "Authenticity is a budget line," Anya said. They went to Naples. Diesel, anchovy ghosts, damp and hot that pretended to be sea air. The skylight played a slice of building painted the color of lemon ice. A stray laundry line wobbled where some invisible breeze tugged it. "Ceiling is a screen," Anya said. She moved until she found the reflection. In the polished lion's mouth handle, faint and rippled by age, a grid of pixels bled a secret onto brass. 4mm LED tiles, Teo said, dithered with a diffusion layer. Your eye won't resolve the grid if the white point is set right. And sound. Layered, distant ambient plus a few close cues, horns, footsteps, a bicycle bell. So the brain places it at two distances. We leave a hole for the call to prayer in Marrakesh and the noon bells in Naples. Anya stood very still. The fan hum drew a line across her nerves like a fingernail on a wineglass. There was beauty here, a cold, engineered beauty, but beauty did not absolve bodies. She crouched at each threshold with the level and found the same deceit. The tiny downward wink that told ankles they had crossed to elsewhere. She held the anemometer in the middle of each room and drew a little map of invisible rivers. This vent exhaled when the door opened, that vent inhaled when it closed. She stepped back into the corridor and lifted her head. "If the system is balanced," she said to Lydia, "then somewhere is the throat, where the air returns, where the cables run." "Behind the paneled oak," Lydia said carefully, "are voids, between the original walls and our structures. We use them for ducting, scent lines, power, and fiber. They are not accessible to the public." "Nor to Marta before she fell?" Anya asked. Lydia's jaw shifted. "There are access hatches. The service ring runs behind the doors. The goods lift drops to the basement. There is a mezzanine above the Naples room. It is structurally separate from the service ring. Yet your scents flow like blood through one body," Anya said. "And blood follows arteries." They walked to Tokyo without opening it. Anya scanned the jam, the lion's mouth, the floor tongue. The scuff she'd seen earlier was still there, a crescent the color of old oil. She taped off the area and swabbed. "Grease," she said. "Not from public boots." "Machine grease," Lydia agreed. "From the lift or the shutters behind the wall." Anya knelt, ear close to the wood. She closed her eyes. The corridor breathed again. A sigh from the east end that ran along the baseboards and vanished behind Tokyo's hinge. Not HVAC. Not the regulated breath of a building. A smaller lung. "Open the service panel nearest this door," she said. Raffle hesitated a hair too long, then led them 3 doors past Tokyo to a section of paneling with invisible seams. He pressed a spot with his thumb. A hidden catch clicked and the panel swung inward. The cavity beyond was dark and smelled like warm dust and citrus cleaner and something faintly metallic, like blood once it has decided to be old. Anya flicked on her torch. Fiber bundles glowed in the beam like tendons under skin. Narrow ducts ran with foil bellies. A scent line, clear tubing with a check valve, vanished down the void toward Tokyo's frame. "Put your hand here," Anya said to Lydia, guiding her palm near a duct seam. A barely there thread of warm air licked their skin. "Door pulse," Lydia whispered. "It bleeds into the void a little." "And where does the void empty?" Anya asked. Lydia pointed to a rectangle farther in. "There. That rises to the mezzanine plenum and drops to the basement mixer. We conserve pressure by letting it equalize through a plenum chamber." Anya nodded. "We will map it." Teo hovered near the panel like a man eavesdropping at confession. "People cried," he said abruptly, as if he needed to justify the art. "In Paris. They cried at the way the light hit the church stone at 8 a.m. They said we'd given them back a city. And then you took someone," Anya said, voice flat. "Cities don't do that. People do." She backed out of the void and sealed the panel. The corridor seemed narrower now, indexed by ducts and cables and a hidden geometry that had nothing to do with wonder. She set a pollen trap under the Marrakesh skirting and a dust card at Naples. She logged the scents, the light temperatures, the acoustic flatness. She chalked each threshold's tilt. She wrote the words "loop ready for mismatch" next to Tokyo and underlined Greece. Machine twice. "Elegant stagecraft," she said at last. "Convincing, layered, patient." Teo's mouth tried on a smile and then abandoned the attempt. Lydia stared at the oak and looked, for a moment, like someone watching a beloved trick being explained too slowly. Anya slid the notebook back into her pocket. "We have the bones of the illusion. Now we need to know where it breaks. Stagecraft does not push a woman down a shaft. Stagecraft does not swallow a journalist. We will find the human hands that did what the machines could not." Part 3, The People with Keys and Reasons. The administrative offices were up a narrower stair than the public ever climbed. A stair of stone that bowed in its own middle where centuries had worn it smooth. Anya touched the rail as if she were reading Braille. She wanted the inventory of hands, who had gripped here in haste, who had paused to listen on the landing. The corridor at the top smelled less like oak and more like paper and toner, a scent that told the truth by accident. "Keys," she said, holding out her palm as if asking for coins. Raffle produced a ring with a magnet fob and 2 physical keys. Lydia passed over a lanyard with a chipped badge and a separate brass key that looked absurdly old. "Electromagnetic locks in the hall," Lydia said. "Physical keys for the utility rooms. The brass one is for the scent tanks. It's a relic," Janusz insisted. "Who else carries duplicates?" Anya asked. "Security has spares in the office safe," Raffle said. "Janusz had a master. Teo and I have area access." "Not anymore," Anya said. She divvied the keys to an evidence tech at her back and signed a small form on the tech's clipboard. "You'll move under escort until further notice. If you need a door, you'll ask." Lydia's mouth made a line that cut her face into 2 different women, the practical engineer and the person now being treated as a suspect. Teo only nodded, eager to be obedient if obedience promised absolution. They filed into Janusz Rona's office. It was all shelves and framed letters and a window that watched the rooftops like a bored hawk. The desk hosted an expensive pen and a cheaper planner. Anya flipped the planner open. Appointments stacked like planks. Board lunch, press preview, donor walkthrough, phone surrendered, meeting, insurance. "That one," Anya murmured, tapping the last entry. "When?" 3 days before Pyotr's tour, Lydia said. He'd insured the Atlas at a valuation that made the board giddy. If something catastrophic happened, we could rebuild. Anya lifted the planner's ribbon to see what lay marked beneath. A single post-it, cheap as an afterthought, clung to the paper. On it, in Janusz's precise hand, "Debt restructure. Keep DK off the floor." The initials sat like 2 nails hammered halfway in. "DK?" Anya asked. Lydia shifted. "Daria Kroll. His sister. Logistics. She isn't staff, not officially. She handled outside rentals. Shipping. Space leases. Quiet things." "Quiet things?" Anya repeated. letting the syllables cool. We'll meet her. She opened the desk drawers. In the second, a velvet bag with slotted foam held 3 flash drives labeled Atlas. Backup 1, -2, -3 in Teo's handwriting. In the third, a folded paper with the scent recipes written in a language that was half chemistry and half appetite. Anisaldehyde, roasted phenol blend, cumin essential, marine aldehydes, and a list of warnings in Lydia's block letters. NO overpressure on lift. Pulse limit 2 SEC. Do not bypass shaft locks. Yet someone bypassed them, Anya said, slipping the flash drives into a bag. She looked toward the window without moving. A faint reflection in the glass showed Teo's face, and beyond him the door. The angle gave her both the person and the line of escape. Tell me about Janusz, she said without turning. Not the curator on the brochure. The man who rearranged stairs. He was charming, Teo said, softening and hardening on the same breath. He could make a board member feel like a revolutionary by letting them lean on a hidden panel. He liked the Atlas because it made him a conjurer, not a caretaker. He was also broke, Lydia said flatly. He mortgaged everything to get the Atlas started. The board loves promise. They hate invoices. He begged the insurer to cover what they wouldn't. He said when we opened internationally, the revenue would erase the risk. And Marta, Anya asked, what did she dislike about him, aside from gravity? She liked would that fit square, Lydia said. She liked braces that held. She said his deadlines insulted wood. They quarreled weekly. And Pyotr, Anya said, what did he want? To break the magic? Teo blurted, then checked himself. To explain it. He prided himself on seeing the seam in every miracle. He asked for diagrams, for invoices, for fiber routes. He asked whether any of the city rooms had mirrors somewhere else. Anya turned a page in the planner. Tucked inside was a receipt, thin and curling, for a cash withdrawal equal to a small car. The memo line in the bank's blunt type, operations. You said outside rentals, Anya said to Lydia. Whose name on the leases? Not mine, Lydia said quickly, then slower. Sometimes mine when it had to be equipment, often an LLC. Kroll Holdings. Daria signed. She said Janusz preferred a firewall. Firewall between what and what, Anya said, is the only interesting question. They left Janusz's office for the security suite. On the way, Anya paused at a mezzanine window that looked down into a dark, disused chapel. The stone ribbing held the night like a cupped hand. For a moment, ridiculous, involuntary, she felt watched. It wasn't superstition. It was architecture. Old buildings learned to look back by outliving their builders. The security room was a tangle of screens bracketed to a wall that hummed softly. A coffee cup with Raffles' name on it stood on a coaster ring the color of ancient tea. The monitors cycled through camera feeds, stone corridors, a loading dock, the Atlas hallway, the entrance lobby, a blank screen labeled service ring 2. Why is that one black? Anya asked. Privacy, Raffles said. Staff areas. Limited footage. Show me the limits. Anya slid into the chair and woke the console with a tap. The log blinked in spreadsheet ovals. Door open, door close, timestamps, operator IDs. She scrolled until the date of Pyotr's tour and let the entries frost her skin. At 1912, Tokyo, open, operator, TNO. At 1913, Tokyo, close, operator, auto. No corresponding exit. At 1914, a gray flag, feed source switch, Tokyo, loop, operator, TNO. Loop, she said. Weather mismatch, Teo said quickly. It looked wrong. The feed we had was clear sky. The city had showers. I swapped to a loop to avoid the dissonance. Without logging a visitor still inside, Anya said. Your loop granted invisibility. Teo's mouth opened and shut. Anya keyed to a different day. Marta's. The entries felt light to the eye until they hit a wait. Mezzanine access. Override. Operator. Raffle. Goods lift. Manual mode. Operator. Unknown. Service ring 2. Camera offline. Operator. Sys. Manual mode, she said. From where? Raffle rubbed his jaw as if he could rub the stubble into different answers. There's a keyed box near the shaft. For maintenance, you need a physical key. Your brass relic, Anya said to Lydia. She returned to the blank screen labeled Service Ring 2 and opened the settings. A checkbox lay empty where a camera should have been enabled. She checked the audit log. The box had been unchecked 6 months ago by admin JW. Janusz liked blind spots, she said. He preferred secrets to systems. Some donors asked not to be seen, Raffle offered. Phones were banned. Surveillance made them nervous. Criminals also prefer privacy, Anya said. She turned her head to the side as if listening to something through the wall, and found only the little electric hum again. Retrieve the backup drive from this suite. I want off-console copies. The evidence tech obliged. Anya watched the cable snake unplug, the drive blink, the small motion of Raffle's throat when he swallowed. Let's talk money, she said, standing. Debts, off-book payments. Who here took envelopes? Lydia stiffened. We're paid like museum staff, detective. We write grants for gaffer tape. Teo made a shape with his hands that might have been a plea or a cage. Janusz paid me overtime, in cash. He said donors didn't like to see certain invoices for technical rehearsal. He said it avoided questions. How much? Teo named a number that would equal the cash receipt in the planner if you took it in 3 bites. And you? She asked Raffle. He held her gaze a fraction too long. I do my job. Your boots do more, Anya said, and let it go for now. She walked them back through the hall with its lion-mouth handles and its letters in brass. The building had settled into its day noises by now. Somewhere a delivery dolly rattled. Somewhere a docent's heels ticked like a metronome. The Atlas wing, sealed and silent, felt like a theater between acts, breath held, masks hung on pegs. At the end of the corridor, Anya stopped as if talking to the doors themselves. Let me be simple, she said. We have a curator in debt who ensured a miracle and preferred blind spots. We have a technical director who built the breath and the light and wrote warnings no one honored. We have a media operator who keeps loops warmed and took cash to oil the nights. We have a security man who carries a master key and logs overrides that walk into black screens. We have a journalist who loved to find the seam, and a restorer who fell in a section without eyes. Lydia's knuckles had gone white on the spine of her notebook. Teo studied a point somewhere near his shoes. Raffle's jaw worked like a man trying to bite through a rope. And we have Daria Kroll, Anya finished softly, who signs rentals in other cities and stays off the floor. Keys and reasons. Reasons and keys. She turned away from them and looked down the long oaken throat of the Atlas one last time. The doors did not blink, could not, and yet there was the feeling again of being looked at. Less like a ghost, more like a stagehand peering through a hole in the curtain. We will pull the twin rope next, she said. If there's a room abroad that breathes when we open a door in Krakow, I want to hear it wheeze. Part 4, the twin rooms abroad. The first wire was invisible until you named it. Then it was everywhere. Anya had the forensic techs pull the castle's router logs off the wall like a molar. In the server closet, thin as a coffin and twice as warm, she stood with her hands on her hips while cables sweated against each other. The rack LEDs pulsed in idiot heartbeat green. A junior in a museum polo, face lit a sick aquarium blue, said, It's all Nate, but the Atlas subnet keeps up for persistent tunnels. Same handshake, same keep alive, every time the doors are live. Where to? Anya asked. He read off 4 addresses. The geolocation tool planted flags like tacks in a map. Naples, Tokyo, Marrakesh, Lviv. You said tunnels, Anya said. VPN. Close enough. Layered. Somebody cared about latency more than secrecy. The packets are small, frequent, and picky about time. Like queues, Anya said. Like a call and response. Back in the security suite, she scrolled the Atlas schedule beside the network log. The lines matched like teeth. Doors opened in Krakow. The tunnels woke abroad. Doors closed. The tunnels yawned and went still. She could almost hear it if she let herself, for a dangerous second. Believe that rooms breathe to each other across distance. Inhale here, exhale there. She shut the thought down. Get me physical, she said. Contracts, rentals, shipping. The paper trail did not make her wait. From Janusz's email archive. Leases for month-to-month apartments that were not anybody's home. The names on the documents were careful, an LLC in one city, a different holding company in another. But the emergency contact was the same in all four. Daria Kroll. The addresses made a crooked constellation. A fifth-floor walk-up off Via dei Tribunali. A room above an izakaya with a shutter that never seemed to open for business. A cube of whitewashed rooms near Bab Dukala. A gray flat staring at a Lviv courtyard where laundry strung like prayer flags. Photos? Anya asked. Attached? Said the tech, and filled the screen with a set of bland, overexposed realtor images. The room stripped and clean, a white door here, a blank wall there. Zoom on the jam, Anya said. The blandness broke. In each city, at shoulder height on a doorframe, a black square no bigger than a postage stamp sat where a lazy painter would have rolled over it. It was nothing to a casual eye. It was everything to a machine. Fiducial markers, Lydia said, stepping closer, her voice betraying both pride and dread. Air Yuko tags. The cameras in the castle doors see them through veneer. They anchor perspective. You can make a fake window line up to a real room if both ends share a crosshair. Anya looked to the oak around them. You hide tags here too. Lydia didn't answer, which was answer enough. Shipping confirmed the skeleton. Waybills with Lydia's name on the sender line, her real, traceable name, tethered the castle to the flats, stage flats. Panel set 3, Napoli. Ceiling grid, Marrakesh. Vent housing, Tokyo. Door surround, replica oak, Lviv. The crates moved like chess pieces, always just ahead of a new press preview or donor night. I signed because customs wants a responsible engineer, Lydia said tightly. Janusz said it kept things efficient. He said we were exporting an experience. He never said we were borrowing rooms. You weren't, Anya said. You were renting lungs. Teo shifted in the doorway like a wire under load. We didn't pipe video from those flats. That would have been complicated. We used feeds we controlled. The overseas rooms were for tie-in queues. A bell there, a fan there, a scent dumper. The brain wants coincidence. You give it 10 and it will call it truth. Show me your notes, Anya said. In the media office, Teo unlocked a folder he must have been planning to hide and didn't. The files opened as JSON arrays, concise, clinical. Remote_event, Naples_bell, local_actuator, Paris_SFX_bell, latency_ms, 120. Remote_event, Tokyo_event, local_actuator, draft_vent_p3, latency_ms, 80. The list ran on tidy as an account ledger. You listen, Anya said. For a sound in Naples, someone striking a brass bell hung by a door. You hear it through your tunnel. That triggers a sample here. A bell rings in the Paris room. The donor laughs because the world outside the window answered them back. They believe. It makes it feel alive, Teo said, in a voice that wished it had chosen different words. Anya sent the addresses and leases to liaison officers through channels that turned paperwork into action. She did not need to leave Krakow to step into the twins. Naples first through a carabinier's phone camera. A narrow flight of stairs that would punish a strong knee by the third landing. A door with the lock rebaired twice. Inside, a rectangle of a room with tripod scars denting the floor, marks at measured intervals on the skirting where something had been anchored and then unscrewed. The bell hung by the door, cheap brass on a cheap hook. The officer's finger tapped it. In the Atlas corridor, Lydia flinched at a tiny chime that bled through a muted speaker in the media rack. Don't play God, Anya said. We'll do the experiment later. I want witnesses now. Tokyo next, the liaison's voice soft like carpet. A tatami room with the smell of mold that came from never being truly lived in. A desk no one had written at. A fan on the floor with tape over its brand name. The officer knelt and ran a hand under the sill. His fingertips came away with a film of black like printer's soot. "Marker adhesive," Lydia said. "We use matte lacquer to make it less reflective to the camera." Marrakesh, a local policeman with a poet's voice and a patience that made the phone steady. White walls, a rolled rug, a diffuser unit the size of a shoebox trapped in the corner like a guilty pet. He unplugged it. The plug sparked the way plugs do in old buildings. In the Atlas wing, the VOC analyzer, still idling in Anya's pocket, threw up a tiny, delayed hiccup on its graph, like a body forgetting to breathe and remembering. Lviv last, gray light in a gray stairwell. The neighbor woman in a housecoat, her mouth set to tolerate the world. Yes, she had heard people come and go at odd hours. A woman with a slight limp, feet that sounded uneven when they tried not to. A man with boots that did not forgive the stairs. They carried crates and left the windows shut even in summer. They put tape on a door frame and pretended to polish it when anyone watched. Names? Anya asked, though she knew. "The woman called for Daria in the stair once," the neighbor said. "The man called her Syastra, sister." Anya wrote the words even though they didn't need writing. By late afternoon, the map was drawn, if not yet mounted. For city rooms that were not illusions but mirrors, functional mirrors, kept ugly and empty on purpose, built not to charm but to drive the show. A bell in Naples called a bell here. A fan in Tokyo tickled the draft in Krakow. A scent line in Marrakesh fed a diffuser that breathed on cue. A marker in Lviv told a camera in Poland that a rectangle was still a rectangle when you lied to it. "Elegant," she said, and meant it, once, only once. Then, now the people. They had voices to go with the rooms. A neighbor in Naples who said a woman with a cane, no, not a cane, a favoring of the left foot, carried small boxes in at midnight. The izakaya owner in Tokyo who thought the upstairs was cursed because it played a television to an empty room and sometimes the fan ran when no one was there. A small boy in Marrakesh who told the officer that the white room smelled like the market at noon when no one was cooking. The woman in Lviv who had a talent for noticing laundry and lies and didn't care for either. What did they see the night Pyotr went missing? Anya asked into each line. Naples. Nothing. Tokyo. The sound of feet on the stair and the fan running past midnight. Marrakesh. A taxi at 2 in the morning and a woman's voice once, low and hoarse with fatigue. Lviv. A crate too heavy for one person, and the man with the boots cursing in Polish when it caught on the landing. Anya let the facts stack in her head like crates. 2. The horror, when it came, was never in the machine. It was in what people carried through it. In Teo's code folder, buried under the Q maps and latencies, she found one more document. Linked actions, test manual. The first page listed a dry run with timestamps. The second page had notes in Teo's hand that went careless at the bottom. R. Says cold route clear. D. Says crate can hold 70 kilograms plus padding. If loop used, do not hit live feed. The last line had been penned and repenned until the paper bruised. No phones. No phones. 70 kilos, Anya said. Padding. Loop. Teo stared at his shoes the way the guilty look at maps. It doesn't say Pyotr, he whispered, like a man bargaining with grammar. It doesn't have to, Anya said. She stood in the Atlas corridor again. Doors shut like mouths after a story they didn't want to repeat. The building had gone still in the way buildings do when they know their tricks are named. Somewhere, lower than hearing, she felt the goods lift remember the weight of a person. The Atlas is a stage with 2 sides, she said. We have the second half of the trick. She looked at the Tokyo plaque and saw her own reflection distort in the lion's brass lip. Now account for the missing journalist. Part 5, the door that glitched. They waited until the castle's afternoon hush. The hour when school groups have been herded back to buses and the donors have not yet decided to feel important again. The Atlas wing carried the mild, medicinal quiet of a stage between cues. Anya asked for the Tokyo door and nothing else. Raffle brought the ring of keys as if it weighed more than brass. Teo rolled a cart with 2 monitors, a splitter, and a drive array. Lydia carried a pouch of swabs, tape, and a cotton-tipped wand she treated like a priest treats a relic. Everything we do gets mirrored to an external, Anya said, touching the drive. If I see a cut in the recording, we start over with a warrant and a locksmith. Teo's thumb twitched. There won't be a cut. They stood before Tokyo. The lion's bronze lip threw back a smudged ribbon of their faces. At eye level, the plaque's letters were so deeply sunk that the edges drank shadow. Before you open, Anya said, freeze the current feed. Teo tapped a command. The window that wasn't a window paused on a strip of sky and a handful of clouds. Long-bodied, filament, shaped like pulled sugar. Time and weather, Anya said. Today's. Teo overlaid a tiny clock in the corner. System clock. NTP synced. And the public feed? Anya asked. He split the screen and brought up a live weather cam from the same Tokyo district the atlas pretended to overlook. The sky, there was a dull plate of gray, unbroken. A low rain scrubbed color from the street. Mismatch, Anya said. Teo said nothing, because there was nothing to say that wouldn't land like a confession. Roll back to Pyotr's night, Anya said. The recording for that date loaded with the mechanical patience of machines. The Tokyo window sprang to life. Night blue sky salted with city glare, neon that breathed like a dragon in sleep. People slid past the frame edges as slick as minnows. The timestamp in the corner read 19 hours, 11 minutes, and 32 seconds. Anya watched the seconds advance. 19 hours, 12 minutes, and 1 second. 19 hours, 12 minutes, and 20 seconds. The door log in the split screen chimed with its neat, incriminating syllables. Tokyo, open, TNO. On the recording, the door edge entered frame at a slant, just visible as a strip of oak in the far left margin. Air moved. The gauzy curtain by the knot window lifted and settled. At 19 hours, 13 minutes, and 4 seconds, the door closed again, auto-slow, the kind of close that says you saw nothing happen here. The feed continued. Neon sighing, people's shadows, light from a vending machine flaring and dimming like a small god. Freeze at 19 hours, 14 minutes, and 10 seconds, Anya said. The frame froze. Anya leaned in. With a pencil tip, she traced a cloud's edge in the paused sky, the exact curve of it. Then she jumped to 19 hours, 15 minutes, and 10 seconds. The same cloud made the same patrol across the same patch, molecule for molecule. She returned to 19 hours, 14 minutes, and 10 seconds, back to 19 hours, 15 minutes, and 10 seconds, then forward to 19 hours, 16 minutes, and 10 seconds. The same curve, the same breath. Loop, she said. A crisp one. 1 minute. Teo swallowed. To avoid the dissonance. It was raining. Our recorded sky was dry. People notice rain that isn't there. They also notice journalists who go in and don't come out, Anya said. Where is his exit? Teo pulled the access report. It had the tidy cruelty of a ledger. Pyotr Nowak, door. Tokyo, entry. 19 hours, 12 minutes, and 3 seconds. Exit. A blank where a human should be. Now the floor, Anya said. They didn't need to open the door to see it. The threshold's tongue of hardwood reached into the corridor like a tongue someone had bitten. Anya had already taped 2 tight rectangles around the smudge she'd noticed days before. Now she placed a low-angle light on the floor and turned it until the grain flashed like a small geography. Talk me through what I'm seeing, she said, not looking up. Lydia knelt beside her. The tongue is maple over a steel subframe. The microslope is achieved with a tapered shim. The finish is lacquer, 2 coats. This mark, she hovered the cotton swab above the crescent of dark, is petroleum-based. It runs across, not along. Someone pivoted, heel planted, under load. Under load, Anya repeated softly. She nodded to the light. An evidence tech took photos from 3 angles, the way the manual insists, the way discipline makes artifacts. Anya took a second swab and ran it over a line of tiny black dots the eye almost refused to see. Pepper scattered across the lighter wood. Fine plaster dust, she said, smelling the swab. From cut panel interiors. From a shaft. Raffle shifted his weight in the kind of way security men do when their knees remember stairs. Open it, Anya said. He worked the handle. The door exhaled cool air with a hint of ozone and hot metal electricity's breath. The room beyond made its offer. City hush, neon sigh. The promise that the difference you felt in your ankle meant you had crossed oceans. Anya took a single step in, then another, moving left, letting her eyes go slack the way hunters do so edges find them. There, she said, in the corner where the wall met the long bank of cabinetry below the false window, a panel line broke the oak's logic. Not big, not obvious, a hair's breadth of shadow where shadow shouldn't be. Lydia pressed her palm to the grain. Hidden catch at shoulder height, under the molding. She found it without looking, which told Anya how often she had found it before. The panel released with the quiet of an expensive lie. Behind it, space. A vertical slot of dark that breathed a draft like a throat swallowing. Anya ran her light up. Ladder rungs, bolted steel, narrow enough that a broad man would turn sideways to fit. Scuffing down the chute where boots had kissed metal and wood. A smear too smooth to be dust. A clean oval where a hand had tried not to leave evidence and left that refusal instead. Ladder to where? Anya asked. Service ring, Lydia said. Half-meter void behind the rooms. Circles the atlas. From there, the goods lift. Anya handed Lydia the swab kit. Work the smear at the third rung. Low pressure. You're recovering what's left of a wipe. Lydia's professional self woke like a machine reconnected to power. She swabbed, turned, swabbed again. 2 layers, she said, voice going small. Top, citrus cleaner. Under, hemoglobin, faint.
Blood, Anya said.
And someone tried to convince the rung to forget. She went up. The shaft narrowed to the kind of closeness that tells an animal part of the brain about burrows and traps. The ladder rungs rang in her bones. Factory steel, unromantic, not old enough to have learned creak. The second rung had a grit on it that changed under her fingers like a secret. Not quite sand, not quite dust. The fourth had the faintest drag, as if cloth had been pulled over it under weight. At the fifth, the air turned from theater to basement. Cooler, stale, machine-flavored. At the top of the shaft, a rectangular hatch opened into the service ring, a waist-wide corridor that ran behind the atlas like a moat between 2 castles. To the right, cables bundled like veins. To the left, a line of ducts with silver bellies. Ahead, darkness that implied turns taken by people who liked not being seen. Anya held still and listened. Far away, someone set down a mug. The building breathed once and held it. Stay below, she called down. Nobody climbs until I say. She marked the hatch lip with chalk and dusted the edge. A simple trick. The next hand would disturb the dust and tell her who and when. Then she came back down the ladder to the Tokyo room and stepped onto the deceitfully sloped tongue. Now rewind inside the Tokyo feed to 19 hours and 12 minutes, she told Teo. He did. They watched the minute. The door opened. Pyotr would have stepped in. The curtain lifted. The door closed. The loop masked everything after. Inside the room, the camera's gaze never moved. The angle toward the panel corner remained kind. The way a host doesn't stare when a guest spills wine. Put the interior feed side by side with the corridor camera for that same minute, Anya said. Teo split them. The corridor feed showed Pyotr's shoulders as he slipped through the door. Slight stoop, messenger bag, hair that wouldn't obey. The interior feed showed a sliver of his sleeve passing the frame's edge. Then nothing but room. The loop carried on. In the corridor, a shadow flickered at the panel seam at 19 hours 13 minutes and 20 seconds. A soft dog ear in reality, like a page being turned. Freeze, Anya said. She stepped to the seam and looked at the room's corner as if it were an open mouth. This is the minute, she said. The loop made a veil. Someone opened this panel and took a man through a wall while the city kept pretending to be a city. What if Pyotr walked into the shaft himself? Raffel asked, and the question was too quick to be genuine. Then we would have his prints on the rung surface, not a wipe, Anya said. And we'd have an exit on his pass. She looked down at the floor, tongue again, and traced the crescent of oil with her eyes. The shape made a sentence. Pivot, pull, wait. A second, fainter crescent ran parallel, almost lost in the lacquer, as if a second foot had tried to mirror the first but lacked the strength. "Two people," she said, so quietly the word barely made air. "One heavier, one lighter, moving a third. The lighter drags short." Lydia's head snapped a degree, as if she heard a name dragged on a chain. Anya stepped back into the corridor. "Seal this panel," she told the evidence tech. "Dust the edges, tie it, tag it. From now on, anyone who breathes on it does so with my permission." She faced the monitors again and let the loop run. The neon breathed. The clouds repeated their trick of being clouds again. The room was beautifully, precisely false. "Pyotr likely left the show floor through the shaft while your loop disguised the theft," she said at last. The door did not blink. The room did not complain. The corridor believed what the sign told it to believe. She turned to Raffle. "Who holds the key to the manual box by the goods lift?" He didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough to begin. "Good," Anya said, almost gently. "Then the next thing we do is follow this throat to its stomach." She looked once more at the bronze lion's lip, at her own face bent in it. In the reflection, the panel seam was a hairline smile. "Open the service ring," she said. "Let's see where your miracle chews." Part 6, The Hidden Path. The service ring smelled like cut wood that had decided to be a throat. When the hatch into Tokyo's wall finally opened, gloved hands, photographs, powders laid like offerings. Anya went first with a headlamp and a pencil torch, the kind that narrows light to a thought. The void took both beams and kept some. Behind the oak, the castle had grown a second anatomy. Veins of cable, silver-bellied ducts, scent lines like capillaries, junction boxes like knuckles. The oak panels you touched for wonder were only skin. The thing that made the Atlas breathe lived here. "Say what I'm seeing," Anya said, because making Lydia name parts was a way to take them back from whatever had borrowed them. "Primary return duct," Lydia answered, voice kept low by the space. "Fiber to the media rack. Low voltage for actuators. Scent manifold, clear tubing with check valves every 2 meters. Those black squares on the uprights are fiducial plates. Cameras use them to keep perspective honest when you lie." "Honesty for liars," Anya said. "Good trade." The ring was tight, a waist-wide corridor drafted by someone who knew exactly the cost of every centimeter. It circled the Atlas rooms like a moat, sometimes pinching to squeeze past stone piers, sometimes opening enough that a person might breathe without their breath bouncing back into their face. Underfoot, the flooring changed from unsanded plywood to mesh to an old stone shelf that had not expected to host anything but dust. Boots had dragged in other languages. Scratches, arcs, a scatter of crushed insect wings, flakes of paint from somewhere older. Anya found the first story at a knee height on the wall. A smear duller than the rest, wiped in long ovals with a cloth that had not been clean enough to hide its purpose. The lemon citrus of cleaner clung in the air as if the act of wiping had not yet finished. At shoulder height, a brush of darker grease made a thumb-length crescent. "Let me," Lydia said, kneeling with the kit. The cotton swabs lifted what the eye pretended not to see. Cleaner, yes, under it oil, and dust that's been heated and cooled and heated again. Subframe dust. "From the lift?" Anya said, and felt the ring answer. A faint vibration somewhere ahead, like a big cat purring in a concrete room. They followed it. Every 10 paces she paused to listen and to smell. The ring's drafts taught her the building's grammar. This vent exhaled to lift a Marrakesh curtain. That duct inhaled when a Paris door side shut. Where the ring branched, the air chose, and so did she. The cables ran thickest toward the wing's inner curve. The scent lines pooled like clear nerves at certain junctions before vanishing down. The goods lift announced itself with a scuff across the mesh floor where freight had been dragged, missing the platform by an inch and correcting with a curse. The shaft door was an industrial gray that had once been painted to match old walls and had resigned from the job. A maintenance box with a keyed tumbler sat to one side like a smirk. "Manual mode," Anya said. "Key." Raffle's silence lasted 3 seconds too long. Then he produced the brass relic from a lanyard that had never quite gone out of fashion. The key turned with a responsible click. A panel lit. Auto/manual. The manual lamp was a red the eye remembers after the lid's shut. Don't touch it, Anya said. Photograph, log, dust. The evidence tech took the sequence. The red lamp remembered many fingers. Powder found 2 fresh ovals and an older one that had been half-wiped, as if someone remembered too late that red lamps care about who wakes them. Anya crouched at the shaft lip and held her torch over the rails. Fresh grease gleamed in a slim river where the carriage wheels had traveled. At 3 heights, the grease had a different sheen, interrupted by lighter bands. Stop marks, she said. Here at the Atlas floor. Here, mezzanine. Here, the basement room. The carriage rested here most often. She tapped the lowest band. Your stomach. White noise machine will be there, Lydia said, not as a guess. Why? Because even careful people make noise, Lydia said, and machines can apologize for them. They took the service stair that spiraled around the shaft rather than ride the carriage itself. The stairwell was close and coiled, old stone shaved to fit new rails. Every landing was a different temperature, a different smell. Varnish at the Atlas level, a bitter dead air at the level below, that basement breath, cool, mineral, with a layer of machine warmth like a heartbeat behind cloth. At the bottom, the door was the twin of the shafts, gray, ashamed of the paint over it. Anya listened to it before she opened it, the way you listen at a hotel door when you have lost your key. The white noise machine hummed behind it, a sound that wasn't a sound. A softened rain, a tuned wind, the hush you hear in your head when you think you are alone. Before we go in, Anya said, cameras. There were 4 housings in the corridor outside the door, black domes that made their little performance of vigilance. Anya reached up, she is taller than she looks from a distance, and tapped the dome with a knuckle. Hollow. She unscrewed one and let it hang by its cable. Inside, nothing. No board, no lens. A church's empty reliquary. Someone sold piety, she said. No saints inside. She opened the door. The room was concrete and painted the color that institutions choose when they cannot afford hope. The white noise machine sat like a humidifier in a sick person's bedroom, hissing its apology into a perforated grill. The scent tanks lined a wall in a rank of plastic jerry cans with quick connects at their throats. Tape labels in Lydia's square hand. Anise mix, cumin, marine A, diesel trace. Hoses linked to a manifold that tied back into the ring. In the center of the room, drilled into the slab, 4 anchor points weighted in a square big enough to bracket a human body. The bolts' heads shone with that strangest polish, the shine left by hands that are trying to do things gently and fail. One had a fiber tuft caught beneath it, black, synthetic, a hair-thin strap strand pulled where a buckle had bitten. Photograph, lift, bag, Anya said, and the techs obeyed. On the far wall, a cluster of camera housings watched the anchors. Every one of them was an empty eye. A monitor mount opposite held a screen that had been removed. Beside it, a spray of glue residue and a clean rectangle. Something had been peeled off in a hurry and taken its shadow with it. Why a screen down here? Anya asked. So the person in the ring could monitor or line up cues, Teo said. He had the look of a man inventing a future where he had said none of this. Or for Janusz to make speeches to no one but himself. Or to check that a loop was still masking the theft, Anya said, and the room felt colder when she named it. She followed the rails with her torch. At knee height along the wall, a smear dull as old wax ran in a straight line for 4 meters. At its end, a ghost of a crate's outline lived in dust. Where wood had sat, the concrete had not collected film. A rectangle of nothing marks something as well as footprints do. Crate rested here, Anya said. Sized for a roll-in, straps to the anchors through the slats, padding to keep noise down. White noise on. Scent pulses sink to hide sweat. Lift goes to loading. A donor thinks the Atlas is resting. A journalist sleeps in a box. Raffle rubbed his forearm. You're making it sound ritual. It's logistics, Anya said. Ritual is logistics that repeats. Who cleaned this room after Marta? Lydia swallowed. We did, she said. All of us. Janusz said we had to keep the board calm. He said accidents in an old building make donors nervous. We washed the floor. We unscrewed the anchors, then screwed them back for maintenance testing. We didn't know. You knew enough to fill the housings with eyes that don't see, Anya said, and did not put cruelty in it. She let the room supply its own. She knelt where the fiber tuft had been caught and ran a gloved finger around the bolt hole. The concrete there had a darker rim, as if something had bled and been scrubbed and bled again. She lifted a faint, thin smear with a swab and capped it. "We'll let the lab pronounce," she said. "My bet comes painted in iron." Near the lift, a toolbox lived open-mouthed. Inside, tape, spare check valves, a key for the manual box, nitrile gloves, a roll of black gaffer with a flip of grease at the end, as if it had been given to a hand already dirty. Under the tray, a small wedge of wood with grit ground into one edge. She held it to the floor tongue in memory and saw it fill the microslope perfectly. "Counter shim," she said softly. "If you want to move a body across a deceit that steals a millimeter of weight from your ankle, you neutralize it. You learned the trick, you learned how to untrick it." They worked the room as if it had done them a personal injury. Dust cards, lifts, photographs of the glue shadow where a screen had been. A little nest of cigarette ends hidden under a folding chair, the kind a man smokes when he has nowhere to be, when he is timing his actions to a loop. "Brands?" she asked, without turning. "Two," the text said. "One cheap Polish, one foreign." The foreign's filter crushed on one side. Someone who favors the left foot might crush like that when they lean. Anya closed her eyes and let the ring draw itself in her mind. The shaft behind Tokyo, the goods lift, the stomach of the Atlas humming to hide a struggle that the upstairs rooms translated into neon and bells and market wind. She pictured a woman with a mended ankle moving with a short patience, a man with boots at her shoulder, a third person wrapped in quiet because quiet had been made for him. On the way back up, she stopped at the intermediate landing, the one the log had called mezzanine access, override on Marta's night. A short corridor led from the stair to a platform looking down over what would, to the public, have been the Naples room's fake skylight. The safety rail had a new bracket and a place where old bolts had been torn out and replaced. A scuff mark on the deck told a hard inch of story. The arc of a heel that slipped, the sudden pivot of a body correcting, then the long, unreadable white of someone's wipe.
"Martha," Anya said.
She crouched, breathed on the scuff, watched moisture pick out the grain. A dot of glue at the edge had been crushed and never sanded. She pressed an adhesive lift and labeled it. "Glue from the panel interiors," she said. She carried braces. She argued about a brace not set. Someone made her argue at a drop. The mezzanine had a view into the lies, a way to tend the skylight screens, to swap a panel, to pretend nothing had seams. It also had a blind approach from the ring. A person could be pushed where no camera saw, especially when the housings were full of nothing, especially when a curator liked privacy because privacy bought applause. Back in the Atlas corridor, the doors looked like an audience waiting to be told something they would not forgive. The lion mouths ate the reflected lights. The air pulsed with its little stage breaths and then faltered, as if something in the hidden plenum had remembered being named. "Someone used the show to move people where no guest could see," Anya said to the oak. "We have the route. Now we separate hands from machines." She tapped her radio. "Seal the lift. Chain the manual box. Post one officer at the mezzanine access and one at the basement room. No one enters the ring without me. Copy." Comms clicked their small obedient clicks. She didn't look at Raffle when she spoke next. She looked at the door plaques as if the brass might confess. "Schedules put you in this ring the night Pyotr vanished," she said, almost conversational. "Boot dust on your soles matches the shaft. The mezzanine override logs your key. The manual lamp remembers your finger. But the lift stomach says it carried two people, not one." She let the quiet hold until it became its own white noise. "Who ran the machines?" she said. "And who closed the door?" Part 7, Who ran the machines versus Who closed the door? Anya preferred to separate gears from hands before she named guilt. Machines tell you who they need. People tell you what they want. She chose a storage room that once held banners and now held two folding chairs and the kind of light that makes skin the color of paper. The Atlas wing lay 30 meters away behind sealed doors, but the building's breath still found them, a faint pulse in the vents like a sleeping animal's chest. Lydia first, Anya said. The technical director sat straight as a metronome. She rested her palms on her knees, a worker showing she had nothing up her sleeves. If her eyes had been a ledger, every line would have aligned. You built the breath and the light, Anya began. Your name is on shipping manifests for panels and vent housings sent to rented rooms abroad. Your notes warn against overpressure on the lift and bypassing shaft locks. On Marta's night, someone bypassed both. Say the part that is true. Lydia didn't look away. She looked through, as if aligning 2 layers of tracing paper. I designed the scent manifold and the air pulses. I spec'd the LED ceiling. I signed for shipments because customs wanted a responsible engineer. I wrote the warnings because the lift's torque curve was wrong, and Janusz didn't want to pay for a new motor. I did not carry a person into a shaft. What about keeping the service cameras as reliquaries? Domes with no eyes? Her mouth thinned. Janusz said it soothed donors. He said eyes make people feel observed. He liked to sell privacy as a feature. You're telling me you engineered wonder while someone else engineered the kidnapping, Anya said. Who had a key to the manual box? Security, Lydia said.
Janusz.
And me, because if a door stuck and the carriage stalled in a gap, I had to jog it. I logged my jogs. You'll see too. Neither on Marta's night, neither on Pyotr's. Anya slid a photo across the table. The goods lift panel, the manual lamp haloed in red. Powdered fingerprints ovals counted like rings in a felled tree. This lamp remembers 3 hands in the last month. 2 match Janusz and Raffel. The third is incomplete. Lydia's stare didn't move. If it's mine, you'll have my prints from the tools I signed out. If it's not, then whoever helped Raffel that night is your hand. Who warned about overloading the lift? Anya asked. I did, Lydia said. In writing. Twice. He called me cautious. For a second her voice brightened with anger, not grief. Caution is why floors don't drop. Anya let the silence puff once and collapse. You can go for now. Don't go far. Teo came in with his apology already assembled. He clutched a thumb drive like a talisman and perched on the chair as if it would eject him if he lied. The room smelt faintly of plastic and coffee. On Teo it read like cologne. You ran the loops, Anya said. Your code maps tie remote sounds to local cues. You took cash that equals the withdrawals in Janusz's planner and the overtime totals in your inbox. Say the part that is true. Teo nodded too many times. Yes, I wrote the Q parser. I kept loops warm in case weather mismatched. I took cash because he said donors didn't want line items that read rehearsal for private preview. I didn't know they were using the loop to. To what? Anya asked gently. Name it. To take a person, he whispered, and the words sat on his tongue like a fishbone. She slid a printout of the linked actions, test manual doc to him, and tapped the line he had carved into the paper. No phones. No phones. This is not about donors who hate screens. This is about someone who disappears if no record exists. Who told you no phones? Janusz, Teo said. But, he swallowed. Raffel enforced it like religion. He would stop a tour for a glint of glass. On Pyotr's night, you switched Tokyo to a loop. She held his gaze to the minute. You saw the mismatch. You hid it. On the corridor feed, the panel seemed dog-ears reality at 19 hours, 13 minutes, and 20 seconds. Inside, the clouds repeat. Where were you looking? At the overall levels, he said. At the monitoring grid. You stare at histograms long enough and you stop seeing people. Convenient for a thief, Anya said. Less convenient for a defense. She leaned forward. Who else knew your loops were warmed? Lydia, Teo said. And Janusz. He liked to call cues like a maestro calls a baton flick. He'd whisper now into the radio as if timing were music. And Raffel. He isn't a systems man, Teo said. He knows doors. He knows when to stand in one. Did he ever ask you to keep a loop on longer than you'd planned? Teo closed his eyes. Once, the night after Marta. He said a donor had gone faint. He said hold the sky steady. He said the castle should feel forgiving. Anya filed that angle. You and Lydia greased the miracle, she said. But you didn't carry its sins. Who did? Raffle, Teo said miserably. And someone else. There were nights I heard another voice on the radio. Not Janusz. A woman. Short steps when she walked past the media room. Light, then a catch. Anya listened to the ghost of that gate like a metronome with a chipped tooth. Daria Kroll, she said. Teo nodded. I never saw her straight on. She kept to corners. She talked in numbers and crates. Anya stepped out into the hall, leaving Teo with his thumb drive and his private weather. The Atlas breathed once in the pipes and then seemed to hold. Raffle didn't accept the folding chair. He stood, arms crossed, the way men stand when they think bone makes an argument stronger. His uniform was clean. His boots were not. Your rounds don't match door counts, Anya said. You logged a tour that never opened Marrakesh, but the scent manifold shows a pulse at that time. You logged a camera outage assist on service ring too. But the admin audit says admin JW unchecked surveillance 6 months ago and you never checked it back. Your boots carry the same plaster dust and the same mesh-imprinted grit from the goods shaft ladder. His jaw moved, then stopped. I secure the floor, he said. I keep guests safe. You secure the floor by opening a hidden panel at the exact minute the Tokyo Loop hides a theft, Anya said, not raising her voice. You secure the basement by turning on white noise in a room with anchors bolted to the slab. You secure shipping by sliding a crate through the dock at 2 in the morning with a label that says stage flats. Speculation, he said. Anya placed 3 items between them in a neat row. A swab tube marked rung 3 blood, a photo of the crate shadow rectangle on the basement floor, and a screenshot of the lift panel with the manual lamp dusted and ringed where a finger had pressed. His by the match already warming on a lab bench. Names are speculation, she said. Machines are testimony. He looked past her, toward the Atlas doors as if they were a crowd he could fight. I did my job, he said again, but the sentence's scaffolding creaked. You had a partner, Anya said. Heat cameras in the shaft last night, our test, show 2 bodies moving when an alert staged a failure. One heavy, one lighter, dragging short. Who else besides Janusz has that rhythm? Raffle held himself rigid, but his eyes marked the space where a woman's name might fall and shatter. He didn't speak it. He didn't need to. The outline of it hung in the dust. Let me make this easy, Anya said. I'm splitting this Atlas along its live hinge. The people who ran the breath and the light, the stage, are one side. The people who turned a loop into a blindfold and a lift into a throat are the other. Lydia and Teo greased your miracle. They didn't feed it. You fed it. He stared at her as if she had turned a key in his chest. For a heartbeat his face was not a guard's but a man's, something unarmored peering out. You don't know what he owed, he said at last. You don't know who would have come if the bills bounced. I don't care who he owed, Anya said. I care who fell and who vanished. He looked down at his boots. When he looked up, the man was gone and the guard was back. You'll need more than dust, he said. I have more, Anya replied. I have loop logs, bank withdrawals that go to a shell that pays Daria Kroll, floor anchors with fiber pulled from a strap, a mezzanine override with your key on Marta's night, and a neighbor in Lviv who hears a woman with a repaired ankle drag short. I have a crate in a warehouse with padding and a human-sized promise inside. I'm giving you a chance to choose which side of the hinge you stand on when it closes. The air vent sighed, a soft oaken breath. Somewhere a door settled. The building, which had learned to look back, watched his face. Raffle said nothing. Then we move to demonstration, Anya said and stood. We make the trick run under glass. We let it show us whose hands it needs. Part 8, the security man in the middle. They always think corridors don't remember. But the Atlas had learned to keep a ledger in dust and signal, and Anya meant to collect. She started with the route sheet, Raffle's tidy grid printed for auditors who would never ask what lived between the lines. 19 to 1915, lobby sweep. 1915 to 1930, Atlas corridor pass. 1930 to 1945, West Tower stair. The log was a metronome. The cameras, where they weren't hollow domes, put a hairline crack through the rhythm. At 1912 on Pyotr's night, the lobby camera shaded an empty desk where Raffel claimed he stood. At 19 hours 13 minutes and 8 seconds, a corridor lens, a modest workhorse installed by facilities, not the Atlas budget, caught a soft tremor of shadow against the Tokyo door's hinge-side frame. "Freeze and blow it," Anya said. The tech enlarged the corner until artifacts jittered like gnats. The shadow's edge squared at the top and arced at the shoulder. Not a guest. A uniformed bulk cut by a radio's blunt antenna. Then nothing, as if a body had learned to smear itself into air. "His rounds don't match this," Anya said. "He's in the Atlas throat, not the lobby." She stacked this with the lift's manual lamp print, his oval biting the red, with the mezzanine override keyed by his brass, with the grit lifted from the Tokyo ladder, the distinct mesh pattern the shaft floor leaves when it kisses rubber. She added the smear of fine plaster dust from panel interiors, the kind that sticks to boot seams and refuses to shake loose no matter how men knock their heels before they go home. "Build the body," she told the team. "Not the man. The body of proof." There was more. Weeks before Pyotr's tour, a tourist had shot 10 seconds of rule-breaking video in the Atlas corridor, quick, guilty, phone held at hip height. They'd posted it, blurred and triumphant, to an account that cherished small disobediences. The clip panned over Marrakesh, then rightward, too fast, catching the brass letters TOK, before a hand reached into frame and the clip stopped. A reflection, right of center, held for 3 frames. The lion's mouth latch on Tokyo returned a ghost of the corridor like a convex mirror does. In it, a shape hinged free from the wall panel, just a slip of dark becoming darker. And beside it, a shoulder broad becoming absence. "Capture the reflection," Anya said. The tech stitched 3 frames, weighted them, corrected for curvature. The shoulder's profile survived the math. There was the antenna nub. There was the brim of a cap. A silhouette like a stamp. "Whoever enforces no phones missed one," Teo said, not bravely. "Or didn't miss it," Anya said. He reached for it and caught himself on the panel because the training of his hands was louder than the training of his job. She called in telecom, the Atlas's stone eat signal. To keep donors placid and card terminals alive, the museum had installed repeaters, small white plates behind crown molding that pretended to be decorative choices. Repeaters log pings the way lighthouses record who sees them. "Give me phones that loitered near the Tokyo shaft on Pyotr's night," Anya said. "Ignore staff lines. I want device IDs, dwell times." The report was a column of numbers that wanted to be a confession. One device, the serial matching Raffel's work phone, sat in the shaft's repeater ellipse for 19 minutes. It checked in at 1907. It idled while Tokyo opened. It stayed while the loop ran its minute-long reels of clean sky. It left at 1926 and died from the Atlas wing's perspective, swallowed by old stone and the lift's dead pocket. His claim puts him at the west stair during those 19 minutes, Anya said. The stair repeater did not see his phone breathe once. Raffel shrugged when she told him this, the shrug of a man acquainted with lies that fit like uniforms. Repeaters are unreliable in old buildings. They are monotonous, Anya said. Which is better? Boots were the final ledger. She had facilities bring the mat from the service stair landing, the one where staff absent-mindedly scuff soles because scuffing is prayer in buildings built before friction knew about resin. Under the microscope, the mat glimmered with a city's worth of crumbs. Glass flecks, oak dust, a bead of shellac dried to amber, lint, a perfect crescent of black grit that looked like pepper ground fine. Match it, she told the lab. They matched particle to particle. The crescent grit co-signed itself with the same mineral and binder profile as the panel interiors. The oil beads checked against lift grease by viscosity and additive. A smear of citrus cleaner held faint hemoglobin when coaxed with the right reagent. A map inside a mat, not of streets but of habits. Someone walks the ring, Anya said, then kneels to wipe a rung, then rides the lift, then stands on this mat thinking he's left the night behind. The building added one more testimony of its own. A squeal logged by the goods lift's motor controller at 1924 on Pyotr's night, a split-second overcurrent, The kind that happens when weight shifts on a carriage edge and a person says a small prayer not to saints but to friction. We have shadow, signal, residue, mechanics, Anya said to the team. We have a dead curator in debt, a restorer where no camera sees, a journalist swallowed by a loop. We have Raffle where he shouldn't be, doing what he denies. What we don't have is the other set of feet. Daria, Lydia said under breath, as if names could attract lightning. Daria, Anya agreed. Phones are banned, cameras pretend to see, and stairs are rearranged to make donors feel brave. She lives in the unfelt part of the trick. But every trick has a rehearsal. We make them run it for us. She laid the plan out like a careful autopsy. Step 1, she said. We starve them of accidents. No more unplanned failures. We choose the door and we choose the minute. We let a whisper of trouble leak. A jam in a panel. A sickly pulse in a fan. We make the Atlas complain in the tone that wakes engineers and security men. Teo swallowed. You'll bait the loop. I'll bait the reflex, Anya said. The loop is just a glove the reflex puts on. Step 2, she continued. We seed the ring. Heat cameras at the shaft mouths. Pressure film under the rungs. Dust lines chalked to read foot lengths as ticks. The mezzanine rail wears a new powder. The manual box wears a camera that isn't hollow. Lydia looked properly ill. You're asking me to run my system wrong on purpose. I'm asking you to run it the way the human hand already runs it when no one watches, Anya said. The machine is innocent. We're cross-examining the hand. Step 3. We fence the exits. Loading dock eyes realigned and live. The stomach room wired with sound that isn't apology but record. The crate bay marked. Its floor grazed with a thin talc that will take the print of a slat like paper takes ink. Raffle stood in the doorway of the briefing room because he refused the chair again. Arms crossed so hard the tendons in his forearms braided. He said nothing. His eyes were honest about only one thing. He was making plans against theirs. Anya turned to him last. We'll notify all staff of a controlled after-hours test. You'll be on duty because your schedule says so. Panel will fail because I told it to. A door will open. A loop will tempt a conscience. If you keep your hands at your sides, then the trick will sit like a painted city and nothing will pass through the wall. If you don't, the building will write the rest for us. Traps are cowardly, he said. Tricks are too, Anya said. But they work. She returned to the Atlas corridor with the team at dusk, when the castle leans toward the river and the river leans back. The oak drank the half-light until it gleamed like wet bark. She placed her palm on Tokyo, then Naples, then Marrakesh, not touching brass, listening through with the way doctors listen through stethoscopes. Somewhere in the ring, a fan coughed sleepily and spun up. Somewhere else, a relay thought about its maker and agreed to obey. Tonight, Anya said to the doors, to the ducks, to the lion mouths and the panels and the little deceitful slopes. You breathe for us on command, and you tell us who you need when you want to steal. The building did not answer. Buildings never do. They only repeat what's been done inside them. Set the demonstration, she told the team. Make the seam shine. Part 9, the night we rerun the trick. They cut the castle down to 3 lights and a plan. By 11, the public had been turned out and the docents had folded their last maps. The Atlas wing lay behind a taped cross on its rope. The river made its hush outside. Inside, the building rehearsed the noises it made when no one was listening. Anya stood at the far end of the corridor with a radio on her shoulder and a clipboard in her hand. She liked props. They made liars underestimate you. Positions, she said into the mic. Media rack ready, Teo answered, voice tight. Loop banks primed, monitors split, external drive recording. Environmental live, Lydia said from the service ring. Pulse triggers armed, sent manifold in standby. Vents will behave when told. Basement room clear and wired. The tech in the stomach whispered. White noise machine unplugged, decoy speaker hot. Hidden camera active, housings empty left as is. Loading dock eyes up, another voice said. Fresh talc down on crate bay. Mezzanine access powdered, a uniform announced. Rails dusted. No one's breathed on it since the last sweep. Anya looked down the corridor. The door plaques made their brass mutter. She held up a hand. A tech at her side killed Marrakesh's fan for 2 seconds and brought it back. The room made a small cough, the kind that multiplies on headsets. Now, she said. In the service ring, Lydia tapped a relay. On the corridor monitor, Tokyo's curtain lifted, settled, lifted again as if a draft had mislearned its timing. The temperature readout hiccuped 1 degree. These were nothing errors, the kind operators make when a door sticks and they want a show to feel smooth. They were everything errors tonight. Anya triggered the page. In the staff channel, a neutral voice announced, Atlas technicians to Tokyo for panel fault. Security to assist. The building waited. Raffle came into the corridor a full minute before anyone else, walking fast enough to be useful, slow enough to be innocent. He keyed the rope aside in a move his muscles had practiced. Fault? He said, as if he had found a stranger's child crying in a supermarket aisle. Tokyo curtain misbehaving, Anya said, not looking at him. Lydia is en route. He nodded once and walked past Paris, past Naples, past Marrakesh, eyes doing the scan that looks like concern and is a geography of escape routes. He reached Tokyo and put his palm flat to the panel the way a man checks a door for fire. The tiny seam near the cabinetry, Anya's favorite lie, looked like line and not like invitation. Hold, she said into the mic. Lydia arrived, hair tied back and jaw clenched. She carried a pouch and a coil of cable like a rosary. I'll clear the air pulse, she said for the recorders. Might be a sticky valve. Then I'll reseat the curtain actuator. Teo slid in behind them with a tablet and too much breath. He propped the screen on a cart and angled it like a mirror. The corridor camera and the interior Tokyo feed sat side by side, with the system clock ticking like a metronome that knew about judgment.
Begin, Anya said.
Lydia opened Tokyo. The room exhaled city hush and neon. The curtain lifted dutifully, then behaved. She knelt at the panel, hands busy, voice narrating each nothing, checking actuator, reseating clip, verifying draft pulse. Good. She did not open the seam. She did not need to. It opened for her. Heat blossomed on the shaft camera like a ghost finding its temperature. A human shape slid into the vertical frame from above, a shoulder, a head, the angular hum of a radio. Raffle. He'd gone round through the service ring and come down the hidden mouth, as if the habit of entering rooms through walls had already become a preference. He crouched in the cavity and waited with a patience that spoke of practice. Mark, Anya said softly, and the tech laid a timestamp on the heat feed. Another glow appeared at Raffle's back, smaller, the heat map resolving a figure who carried themselves off-kilter. The first step landed full. The second checked itself short, heel not trusting the floor. The thermal palette made intimacy obscene. The left ankle colder where hardware sat under skin. The right hip warmer with the work it did to make up the difference. Hello, Daria, Anya said, not into the radio. On the corridor monitor, the seam dog-eared the light for a heartbeat. Lydia's body masked it. She shifted with the casual posture of someone ready to accept a tool. In the cavity, Raffle's hand rose, heat on the thermal like a flare, and pressed the inner latch. The panel eased. Anya lifted her own hand to the tech. He tightened the dust sensor's threshold under the rung grips in the shaft. He primed the pressure film. Tiny white LEDs buried along the ladder's side. Legal, powered, ignored. Woke their cool eyes. Loop, Anya said. Teo's finger hovered a millimeter, then fell. The interior Tokyo feed breathed and became perfect. Sky repeating, neon repeating. The city that never blinked. The monitor labeled the change with a narrow, merciless caption. Feed source. Loop. In the corridor feed, Lydia's shoulder shifted a degree. In the shaft heat, 2 bodies moved. Raffle descended 3 rungs to clear weight. Daria leaned inward with a practiced angle. The floor tongue took a crescent of oil and wrote it with a flourish. A hand reached into frame. Gloved, square, impatient, and gripped the edge where Anya had chalked lines too faint for anyone not hunting them. White powder kissed cloth. Cloth kissed white powder back. Hold, Anya said into the mic. It sounded like mercy. They executed the choreography they had rehearsed in accidents. A body that wasn't there lifted through a wall. But tonight the wall wrote everything down. The chalk along the panel edge took ridges off a glove. The pressure film under the rungs noted two weights with distinct gaits, one heavier, one shorter. The mezzanine rail, dusted, received a palm with a squared-off ring scar, a habit of a man who wears his wedding band only on donor nights. Heat cameras watched the shaft write a duet. The goods lift panel's hidden eye saw a brass key turn the manual lamp red. Basement, Anya said. Sound. The wired mic in the stomach of the Atlas caught the white noise machine not turning on and recorded. Instead, the wilting fabric sounds of padding disturbed, the buckles talking metal to metal, a whispered curse in a woman's voice when a strap caught the wrong edge. The talc in the crate bay took the negative of a crate's belly. Slats like ribs. A second camera, cheap, steady, obedient, watched a rectangle of wood travel 10 feet and stop on an outline the floor remembered from other nights. On the loading dock, a van's engine turned over once and then waited, as if the driver weren't sure which world he was leaving. Anya let them come to the end of their habit. She let Raffle key the lift into manual, let the motor controller squeal its little overcurrent as Daria shifted weight to the edge, let the crate roll into the dock's camera frame and take a breath before its next lie. Then she closed the book. Now, she said into the radio. Arrest. The corridor filled in one breath with people who had never once hid their faces. 2 uniforms stepped in front of Tokyo and froze the scene. 2 more took Raffle in the shaft mouth, pinning his shoulders against the panel that had trusted him for too long. He tried to break the grip like a man testing a fence, found it live and went still. In the basement, boots and the word police made the white noise machine seem childish. Daria's hands came up from the crate's handle, fingers dusted ghost white with talc and chalk. She did not run. The room had no room for it. On the monitor, the Tokyo loop kept breathing for a handful of instants longer, pouring clean sky over a theft that had failed to finish. Teo killed it with a tap that looked like absolution and felt like betrayal. The interior feed showed Lydia kneeling, hands formed around a tool she no longer needed. She set it down like a confession and stood. Her face was gray with understanding and with relief dark enough to be called grief. Anya walked to the shaft mouth. Raffle stared at her over the officer's shoulder. His pupils were very large. His breath came the way men breathe after lifting something heavy they wish they had not lifted. You knew we were watching, he said, almost admiring, as if naming skill could change what it had caught. You knew we always are, Anya said. You installed empty eyes to pretend otherwise. In the basement, Daria said nothing, but her left foot shifted that half-beat late again, the ankle refusing to sign the same contract as the right. The camera wrote it down without adjectives. Evidence text moved like water over a slate. Rung films peeled and bagged. Chalk prints lifted. The manual lamp photographed with a new set of ovals. The talc's crate negative mounted on card. The overcurrent squeal logged. The radio traffic saved. The breath of the building archived. Anya looked to Teo. Mark all feeds. Secure backs. He nodded, eyes wet and unblinking. The way people stare when the exact shape of the harm becomes undeniable. Lydia leaned against the wall and finally let her face sag. She had built miracles and watched a crime use them like rented lungs. In the loading bay, the van idled and then died. The driver laid his head on the wheel, perhaps listening for an old ocean that wouldn't come. They brought Raffle up through the Atlas corridor like a man being returned to a city he had lied about. He walked past Paris, Naples, Marrakesh, Tokyo, not looking. Daria came up another way, escorted, hands chalked. The doors stood with their mouths shut and their brass teeth showing. On the monitors, heat faded from the shaft profile in slow weather. The ladder cooled. The crate shadow on the talc was a neat postcard of absence. Floor powder prints confirmed 2 sets of sols, the text said, reading from his own notes out of habit. 1 heavy, 1 lighter. The lighter drags short. Anya nodded once. The outline she had been tracing since the first smudge on the floor tongue closed like a drawer. Who else limps? She said, as if asking the building. It answered now with names they already knew. Part 10, The Partner Abroad Comes Home. The morning after the rehearsal became a raid, Krakow's light came up hard and clear, the way winter light does when it wants to be a scalpel. Anya used it like one. She laid documents edge to edge across a long table in the briefing room until they made a topography of debt and disguise. At the Maps Center, a nest of bank statements. Rona Cultural Ventures bled money like a wound. The incoming transfusions were loans that came with teeth. From that account, cash flowed to Kroll Logistics SPZOO, a shell with no employees, only invoices. Kroll Logistics paid apartment leases in Naples, Tokyo, Marrakesh, and Lviv. It paid for shipping labeled as stage flats and vent housings. It paid a woman named Daria Kroll a salary generous enough to ask why it stayed off any public narrative. Janusz moved money through his sister, Anya said, and let the phrase settle. He wrapped his miracle in family paper. The room smelled of coffee that had given up, the flat air of printers, the metallic undertone of cold radiators. Lydia stood with her hands on the back of a chair, as if she needed furniture to keep her from drift. Teo held a cup like a fragile instrument. Raffel and Daria were in holding rooms downstairs. Their names were bones the building had learned to hold without choking. Witness statements from abroad confirm the shell has legs, Anya went on. She tapped video stills captured from the liaison calls. The Naples bell hung on its hook, scuffs on tatami in Tokyo, a diffuser sulking in Marrakesh, the white door in Lviv with its little marker taped like a beauty mark. Beside the images lay affidavits. Naples. A neighbor hears crates at odd hours and a woman descending gingerly, favoring one leg. Tokyo. The izakaya owner says someone upstairs runs a fan to no one. Marrakesh. A boy says the white room smells like the market, even when the shutters sleep. Lviv. A neighbor reports a woman with a short step and a man who swears at crates. She placed a folded medical file on the table with a care that was, by now, a habit. Orthopedics, Krakow, 18 months ago. Patient, Daria Kroll. Repair, left ankle, ORIF with plate and screws. Her gait writes its own signature, Anya said. Every ladder rung we instrumented last night read it without learning to read. A detective from financial crimes, a man who collected whispers from bank APIs, arrived with a new sheet, already annotated. Insurance transfers, he said, tapping where 3 lines thickened. Scheduled payouts contingent on continued operation. Janusz had overinsured the Atlas on the promise of expansion, undercapitalized the build, and mortgaged the future to the present. Miss a payment, default a covenant, he falls off a financial stair. And Marta? Lydia asked, voice thin. Where does she fit in that staircase? She tried to wedge a brace under a rotten step, Anya said. He kicked it out. She didn't soften it. Not anymore. They took Daria first. The interview room had different air from the Atlas. A bureaucratic neutral. No wood to drink light. No lion mouths to throw back faces. The chair sighed when she sat. Chalk still freckled her fingers. A ghost's manicure. Her left foot sat half a pace behind her right. The ankle turned to find a space without ache. She was not fragile. She wore fragility like a costume that didn't quite fit. Do you need water? Anya asked, and Daria shook her head once. A motion that could have been negation or disdain. You handled rentals in 4 cities, Anya said. You arranged shipping. You were the voice on the radio when the trick needed hands. You entered the ring last night and helped carry a crate that had no business holding breath. Daria studied some 0.3 centimeters to Anya's left, the way people look when they won't meet your eyes but won't look away. When she spoke, her voice was husked by cigarettes and bad sleep. My brother built something that would have saved him, she said. But the board likes inaugurations more than maintenance. They gave him applause and invoices. He needed more cities. He needed time. He needed people to vanish in boxes? Anya asked. He needed a restorer to fall where no camera saw? Daria moved the chalked fingers together and apart on the tabletop. Marta was an accident, she said. Janusz called me. He said it was already done. He said the board would take it from him if they smelled risk. He said we had to keep the story simple. You kept it simple by washing a floor, Anya said. By surviving a season, Daria corrected, and something naked looked out through her tiredness. Do you know what it's like to owe the kind of men who aren't on paper? You call them investors because you can't say their names to a board. Janusz was brilliant at saying later. They were not. Who thought of the twin rooms? Anya asked. Both of us, Daria said. Mine was the part where a landlord doesn't ask why the shutters stay shut. His was the part where light pretends to be sky. We were children, detective. We made forts out of blankets and pretended different rooms were different countries. He found wood and money. I found leases and vans. And Pyotr Nowak? Anya said. Journalist. Alive last night in a crate in a warehouse because you signed a letter that said stage flats. Daria's mouth tightened. He was going to write us down, she said. He was going to explain every scene. We could have survived the board and the invoices, but not the story. He asked about insurance. He knew the word catastrophic would make people smell smoke. So you became the smoke, Anya said. She kept her voice level, but the horror asked in the room regardless, like a draft. We were going to let him go, Daria said. It wasn't a lie in the way people think of lies. It was a dream that had been chosen over a fact. After we moved the money, after the board gave Janusz one more round, after the next donor night, after the next press. There's always an after if you name it first. And you're limp, Anya asked, mild as weather. It's a detail that keeps writing itself. Daria's laugh was exhausted. I slipped on a stair while helping my brother build a museum, she said. No loop, no crate, no miracle, just wet paint and a hurry. He paid for the plate with borrowed money and promised me a future with oak. She left the rest of the sentence to rot in air. Who decided to make the service cameras blind? Anya asked. Janusz unchecked the box. But you've been in too many rooms to not have an opinion. She hated them, Daria said, meaning the kind of people who bought whole galleries with dinner. They all say privacy like a prayer when they want to do something dull. He listened. He thought he could use their fear as a feature. He told me we'd turn it back on when the atlas was stable. Anya placed the orthopedic file on the table, letting the patient's name look up at its owner. Daria didn't blink. She pushed the file back with 2 fingers, very neat. You want the story where my ankle is the moral? She said. Where the limp drags me to hell. Write it. Just spell my brother's name right. Your brother is already a body, Anya said softly. Spelling won't change that. Daria's eyes closed. A slow fold that looked like sleep and wasn't. Then don't make him a headline, she said. Make him a footnote in a technical paper about torque and failure. He'd prefer it. Raffles' interview was uglier. He tried for anger and found fear under it. When Anya spread the photos, rung prints, chalk edges, the manual lamp caught with his thumbs oval wearing its own dust like a halo. He bit 1 syllable at a time and swallowed them. You did your job, Anya said, giving him back his line to see if he could still say it. I kept donors safe, he growled. By keeping journalists in boxes, she said. By keeping restorer arguments off cameras. By keeping blind spots alive. He stared at her as if he could make a throat of her face and carry something through it. He couldn't. He said Daria's name last, not to accuse but because the weight of it wanted out. She took it without ceremony. By noon, the outline of charges had bones. Financial crimes returned with the spine of Kroll Logistics exposed. A pass-through that carried insured cash to rented rooms and back to a curator's debt service. Property crimes had a chain. Leases, shipments, keys. Forensics had beginnings. Hemoglobin in Tokyo's rung smear, the fiber tuft under a basement bolt, chalk and talc and mesh grit writing their atomic diaries. The liaison in Lviv sent a small gift. A door camera from a neighbor across the landing, old and sunblind and perfect. The clip, time-stamped the night after Pyotr vanished, showed a gray crate negotiating the stair. A woman's body angled to spare a left ankle. A man's shoulder taking the weight and swearing in Polish when the crate stuck. Loop used that night as well, Teo said miserably, reading his own log like a confession. He, Raffle, asked for a steady sky again. Anya wrote motive on a legal pad and let the pen carry its own momentum. Debt erasure, insurance cushion, blackmail leverage, donor nights, no phones, doors to elsewhere, reputations that would pay to stay unsaid, expansion fantasy, a world of twin rooms breathing together, a miracle that would someday legitimize the sins that birthed it. She added one more word where her hand wanted to hesitate. Control. The thrill of the lever pulled backstage, the power to decide who walks into a room and who walks out. That one didn't go on a ledger. It lived in hands and habits and the way men love red manual lamps. Next, she said, crates. Shipping had sent a note in the early hours after the raid. A manifest for a pallet labeled Tokyo set flats flagged en route to a private warehouse on the city's edge. The dock camera showed a van. The van's plate showed to whom it belonged. The warehouse lease lay in Kroll Logistics drawer. The driver, caught at the gate last night, head bowed to a steering wheel, now sat in a room across the hall, sobered by fluorescent light and the knowledge that crates sometimes turn into coffins. Search warrant is in motion, a prosecutor said, stepping through the doorway with paper that made the air different. We'll open the box within the hour. Anya nodded, then looked to the Atlas corridor through the briefing room window. The doors were shut, the lion mouth serene. The building, seen sideways, resembled a person who had learned to keep their expression still. Go, she said. Bring me back what the crate has to say. When they left, she stood alone in the quiet for a minute, the kind of minute that falls between a question and an answer and is darker because of it. She laid her palm flat on the legal pad until the oil from her skin made a dark oval over control. Then she picked up the pad, the orthopedic file, the bank printouts, and the lease copies, and she followed the team out into the light that wanted to be a blade. Part 11. What was inside the crate? The warehouse lay where the city runs out of reasons and keeps going anyway. Corrugated roofs, rust that wrote its own initials on gutters, a wind that smelled of river metal and cold tar. The sign on the gate read a company name that had changed fonts too many times. Inside, the floor was scored where forklifts had argued and lost. They found the pallet by process and by smell. Tokyo set flats, black stencil on gray wood. Beneath it, another legend in marker. Fragile, LED. The crate's ribs were new. The screws had known only one tightening. Fresh talc on the floor held a negative of last night's stop. Slats printed in a thin geometry that matched the loading bay impression back at the castle. The rectangle waited, too quiet, like a room that has been told to behave. Anya walked the crate once, fingers grazing air a centimeter away from the slats. She listened, first to the building, a distant forklift, a bird lost among rafters, then to the crate itself. The quiet was not absolute. Cloth shifts, tiny, the sound a body makes when it dreams itself heavier. Open, she said. The evidence techs worked the screws and kept each in a numbered vial. When the lid came loose, a breath of air rose that smelled of foam, adhesive, human sleep. Beneath the lid, a skin of black moving blankets stapled at the edges. The first blanket came up in a slow, careful peel. A second layer waited, taped tight. The second layer gave to a third. Beneath that, a foam shell custom cut formed a human absence. In the absence lay Pyotr Nowak. He was pale as printer paper, the color that fluorescents make of the living. A gag sat haltered across his mouth, not brutal but efficient. Tape held it in a clean X, corners folded back for quick release. Kidnapper's courtesy. His wrists had been cinched to his waist by a harness system sourced from theater rigging. Quick release buckles made eights around forearm and hip. His ankles were bound in a padded cuff with webbing that blurred into the foam. A line ran from his elbow to a small drip bag tucked in a corner cavity where a LED power supply might have been. The bag's label wore a pharmacist's shorthand and an alibi smudge. Alive, the medic said, already leaning in, already cutting safe. Pyotr's eyelids jittered as if they were remembering other lights. His breath came shallow, regular, too even to be comfort. The medic killed the line, swept the bag into a pouch, and pressed a thumb into the inner elbow to blunt the vein. Anya took the bag from the pouch with a gloved hand and read the ruin of its label. Midazolam half-scored under a marker line, dosage just shy of hospital, just north of a good night's sleep. Brace his neck, Anya said, habit nested under other habits. We don't gift them a new injury while we save him from the old. They slid him onto a board a breath at a time. Foam sighed, webbing surrendered in clicks and tails. Under his shoulder, caught in the crease between foam and blanket, a black plastic tag winked. A fiducial marker, scuffed on one corner, the kind that told a camera where a rectangle should be. Anya plucked it free with tweezers and dropped it into a bag. Photos, she said, and the room reproduced itself through lenses. Gag before removal, buckles and their bite marks, the drip line's angle and the wrinkle it made in the foam, the scuff where a shoe had pressed outward and found only padding. Everything that could be made to testify was told to remember. Pyotr surfaced the way divers do when the body wants air and the mind is still behind. His eyes didn't understand the ceiling, then practiced it, then found Anya's face by elimination. He tried the gag. The medic's shears had already kissed the X. The harness buckles chattered free like polite handcuffs. Pyotr, Anya said, because names are ground. Detective Anya Biel. You're safe. Do you know where you are? He looked at her mouth as if words were objects he might catch. He swallowed twice, once on pain, once on thirst. Crate, he said, voice dry and small. Brighton? No, sorry, Castle. Krakow. They made the sky repeat. You saw the loop, Anya said. He nodded, the movement shallow. Door. Tokyo. Janusz talking about insurance. Before. Raffle. In the corridor like a wall that moves. A woman's voice on the radio. They said steady the sky. Then. His eyes slipped sideways, finding a private reel. Ladder. Smell of lemon and metal. The white noise like. When you're a kid and put your head underwater. Something hit my ankle. It rang. Then the crate. Then, dream lit by vending machines. Can you breathe? The medic asked. He could. Any pain in your neck? Chest. He shook his head. We'll bring you in anyway. Anya moved around the crate's carcass. One wall had a neat run of holes punched near where a mouth would sit if a person were strapped the way he had been. Air had been thought of, if not dignity. The inside edges of the slats bore numbers in pencil that matched the ones on a packing list taped to the exterior. Flat A6, ceiling grid J, vent housing T. In the bottom corner, a peel of tape had stuck and unstuck. Tokyo set flats layered over an older label that began audio and choked on glue. She found the gag, saved aside by the medic. Cloth with clean edges, cut from the kind used in theater. She found hair caught in the webbing, dark and short. The lab would know whether it was Pyotr's or someone else's. She found 2 loose check valves, identical to the ones in the basement manifold. She found, tucked into a seam as if a hand had meant to pocket it and been interrupted, a small screwdriver with a knurled grip. Maintenance tool, film of citrus cleaner on the handle, a single ridge of chalk embedded near the tip. Bag it, she said. The warehouse manager stood with his hands innocent and out where everyone could see them. He stammered a story about contracts and off-hours deliveries. Anya let another officer collect it. The shape of that story would matter later, but it would not change the crate's mind. Bring the van driver, she called, and they did. The man who had laid his head against the steering wheel last night as if it were an altar. He stared at the foam coffin with the kind of fear that reorders a life after it's too late. His mouth worked. His eyes skittered. Do you know what you carried? Anya asked without heat. I thought sets, he said. They said flats. They said don't jar it. They said don't stop long at lights because the pieces hum on the mounts. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know any of it. He said the last like prayer and might have meant it as one. You'll write down every pickup, every drop, every time a crate felt heavier than it should, Anya said. You'll tell me if anyone followed you or if a phone rang that told you to take a different street. You'll tell me if a woman with a bad ankle signed for anything. He nodded until nodding was the only thing left he knew how to do. Back at the castle, the forensics bench began to talk. The swab from the Tokyo ladder rung brightened for hemoglobin. The fiber tuft from the basement anchor matched a strap in the recovered crate by weave and dye lot. Chalk prints lifted from the panel edge matched the glove seized from Raffle. a work glove with 2 fingers rebuilt with tape where leather had split. The manual lamp's oval matched his thumb with the kind of match that makes juries nod without the need for adjectives. The orthopedic file made Daria's ankle a matter of record. The pressure film from the rungs wrote her gait as a graph that no one would mistake for anyone else's. Teo's logs showed feed source. Loop blinking like a metronome at the exact seconds the shaft heat camera saw silhouettes move. They took Daria down to see the crate. She looked at it the way one looks at a crib after the child has been taken out. The tenderness of an object that was meant to soothe and did the opposite. "We patted him," she said, as if kindness lived in nouns. "We gave him air. We didn't hurt him." "You used a harness that leaves bruises shaped like buckles," Anya said. "You made a loop into a blindfold. You called it until later. You made later into a place to hide a person." Daria did not cry. Her face did one thing only. It folded once, small, hardly visible, as if a memory had been picked up and put down where it could not be forgiven. By late afternoon, Pyotr could sit, then stand. He walked 3 steps with a medic's hand near but not touching. He answered questions in short, careful strings. He recalled being led through the service ring, stairs that felt too tight for shoulders, a white noise hum that made his teeth know the shape of their roots. He remembered Janusz's voice before all this, talking about the Atlas as if it were a country whose passports he could sell. "Did Janusz help take you?" Anya asked. Pyotr shook his head. He argued with someone on the stair. "I heard a hand on metal. Then he fell. After that, the woman spoke. She said steady the sky. And someone laughed once when my shoe squeaked on a rung. A man who doesn't laugh often."
"Rafal?" Anya said.
He closed his eyes. "It sounded like a yes," said backward. They photographed the bruises, the harness impressions, the curve of adhesive residue at the corners of his mouth. They pressed adhesive lifts to his sleeves and found plaster dust where no tourist should carry it. They kept the drip bag and its label in their own custody. The pharmacist's number would have its own hour. When they wheeled the crate into evidence, lid reattached without its screws, edges taped to keep the smell from pouring into halls, Anya walked alongside as if escorting a prisoner. The wood had lost its suggestion of a room. It was a box again, a rectangle, a thing built to carry and conceal. The Atlas corridor was very quiet when she returned, a chapel after a sermon. Paris, Naples, Marrakesh. Tokyo stared ahead, as if they could not count how many times they had blinked for a lie. Lydia stood under Naples, hands tucked into her sleeves, as if to keep them from remembering what they had built. Teo had turned off the monitors and left their screens to hold their own dark. "We have the missing," Anya said, and the words changed the air. "We have the tools. We have the hands." The corridor did not answer. It didn't need to. The crate had said enough. Final part, rooms borrowed from elsewhere. The charges went up the way scaffolding does, joint by joint, until the shape of a building was undeniable. Rafal Krawick, kidnapping. Murder in the first degree for Marta Trzaska. Murder in the second for Janusz Rona. Unlawful restraint. Evidence tampering. The indictment read like a corridor. One count led to the next with doors on either side. The lab gave it backbone. Hemoglobin on the Tokyo rung swabbed from a wipe that carried his cleaner citrus. Pressure film signatures from the ladder that matched his weight and stride. The manual lamps read, "I wearing the oval of his thumb like a relic." Mesh grit from the shaft floor sunken into his boot tread in a pattern no lawyer could launder. Daria Kroll, kidnapping. Conspiracy. Money laundering. Cross-border coordination of unlawful surveillance. Her ankle confessed in graphs, riser by riser on the ladder, a short, compensating hitch no other body wrote. The leases put her in 4 cities at once. The door cam in Lviv gave a silhouette to her name. Chalk lifted from the panel seam powdered the fingers she folded so neatly in interview that the dust fell off like snow. Teo Nowak, system tampering. Unlawful surveillance. Conspiracy to commit kidnapping. His code was both confession and cartography. Q maps, latencies, the neat little caption feed source. Loop blinking at the seconds a man was walked through a wall. The cash in his pocket matched the withdrawals in Janusz's planner. He did not carry the crate, but he warmed the veil that let a wall pretend it wasn't there. Lydia Walczak, administrative penalties for unsafe systems, fines for environmental violations, no prison. Her warnings, no overpressure, do not bypass shaft locks, stood up in court like tired witnesses, and her cooperation made a bridge through which the case crossed. Anya's statement braided the pieces together without embroidery. She stood at a lectern in a room that smelled of microphones and coffee and said, "We did not pursue a haunting. We pursued a habit. The Atlas was an elegant stage. People used it as a throat. That was all. Reporters wanted adjectives. She gave them nouns. The castle exhaled the show in stages. First the lion mouth handles came down and lay on cloth like teeth under a pillow. Then the plaques. Paris, Naples, Marrakesh, Tokyo, unscrewed in neat turns and went into boxes that did not lie. The LED ceilings died daylight by daylight. The last to go was Naples, and when the diffusion panel lifted, a rash of dead moths fell from the cavity like lost snow. Ducks came next. Their foil bellies slit and coiled. Scent lines clipped and capped. Manifold valves turned to the closed no guest had ever been allowed to see. The service ring looked bigger without its secrets. Light reached places that had only known torches. The hidden catches that had trusted a certain kind of hand were taped shut with warnings that used simple words. The white noise machine went silent and looked foolish. Someone set it by the door, and no one wanted to claim it. It hummed a little involuntarily, then remembered it had been unplugged and stopped. The 4-floor anchors came up with a groan and left 4 gray circles like healed wounds. In the basement, they stacked the evidence like broken instruments after a concert. Hinged panels with fingerprints caught in chalk, the toolbox with the countershim still dusted, the crate that had carried a name and chosen not to, now sealed and labeled and afraid of nothing. A small cardboard box held the fake camera domes, black glass empty as an apology. They looked like eyes, but they were only lids. Abroad, the twin rooms folded. The bell in Naples was photographed in place and then taken down. The izakaya owner in Tokyo unlocked the shutter upstairs, and daylight went in like a gasp. Mold lost its courage. The diffuser in Marrakesh was unplugged, tagged, boxed. The white room learned true silence. In Lviv they cleaned the door frame where the marker had been, and the paint dried without remembering it ever held a crosshair. When Anya walked the Atlas corridor one last time, it had been reduced to geometry. The oak had dulled, now the oil was no longer fed for donors. The stones admitted the morning without pretending it was from Paris or Tokyo. She could hear the river again when the wind behaved, and without the scent manifold's lies, the hall smelled like dust, old varnish, paper, and her own wool coat. Pyotr came to see the corridor resurrected as itself. A week clear of sedatives, he had color again and a new way of holding doorframes. With attested care, a humor earned the hard way. He stood where Tokyo had been and watched the place the seam used to dog-ear the air. "You'll write it," Anya said. "Not as a trick," he answered. "As a cautionary tale. Not what they built, but what they used it for." "Write both," she said after a beat. "We're bad at distinguishing means from ends until someone is already in a box." He made a face that was agreement and the shadow of anger. Janusz talked about control like a conductor talks about time. This gesture, that breath. He forgot the person who hears the music doesn't disappear when the baton drops. "Control is a short word," Anya said. "It hides a staircase." He nodded. "Lydia asked me not to crucify the engineering." "Don't," Anya said. "She built a stage. He sold a miracle. They made a market for absence. That's on the people." He looked down the oaken throat. "What do you hear when you stand here alone?" "Drafts," she said. "Plaster shrinking. A hinge that wants oil. The ordinary noises of a building that's relieved to stop pretending. Not cities. Cities can take care of themselves," she said. "They don't need a castle to speak." The court took its time, as courts do when they mean to be thorough. Raffel held himself together until the day the mezzanine photos went up. The rail brackets, torn bolts, the scuff that drew a half-moon story across the deck. When the witness described the squeal in the lift motor as the extra weight dragged off-center, he shut his eyes like a man who has found the one sound he cannot fight. Daria stayed folded small. She listened with the patience of someone used to a life that makes you wait. When the Lviv door camera played its gray crate and the woman's careful ankle, she did not look away. Teo pled out halfway through voir dire, testimony and fines traded for the first clean sleep he would have in months. Sentences came like weather, incremental and then decided. Raffel received years that counted bodies. Daria fewer but iron. Teo, probation and the long charity of community work. Lydia, penalties that lived in paper and an industry that would not forget her name, paired with a letter in the file that said she had chosen to help turn the miracle off. The insurance money, frozen since the warrants, went where money goes when courts lose romance. To claims, to restitution, to the unglamorous vaults of maintenance funds that keep floors from dropping. When the Atlas finally came down to bare stone and blank oak, facilities rolled in scaffolds and talked about returning the corridor to a truth it had never consented to be parted from. They spoke of an exhibition about illusions, not the Atlas but the history of tricks and their ethics. A sign went up that promised ventilation upgrades and improved access, institutional phrases for an exorcism. On her last pass, Anya paused by the space where Tokyo had staged its sky. The cabinet was gone. The wall was honest and pocked, patched where screws had once been. A hairline scar traced the route the seam had traveled. Plaster tells on carpenters even when carpenters are careful. She laid her palm on the place where the panel's catch had lived and felt nothing but cold. "You'll miss it," said a custodian, rolling a bin of hardware past. He meant the theater. "I'll miss the donors not having a reason to ask for the lights off," she said, and the custodian barked a laugh and kept walking. She left a sentence in her report that would become the closing paragraph everyone remembered, partly because it was useful, partly because it felt like a door closing softly. A door can lead anywhere if you carry the room with you, and if you lie about where the stairs go. It read like philosophy. It was only hydraulics. On the day the public returned to this wing as a corridor, people paused out of habit where the plaques had been. Some of them smelled for cumin and found only dust. A child ran a hand along the oak and said, "It's smooth," in the voice children use when they are impressed by things they don't yet have a word for. A docent, retrained, talked about the castle's heating history and how drafts once convinced people of spirits. Someone laughed, the good kind, and the laugh did not echo from a speaker hidden in the wall. Anya, already halfway to the next case, paused at the top of the west stair and looked back once. The doors were gone. The negative space where they had hung made a ranked beauty out of nothing at all. A draft side at a latch that lived only in memory. It smelled like oak and plaster and river, not like a city. She let the breath pass her cheek and felt, for the first time in weeks, something like sleep put its hand on her shoulder and say later is now. Case closed. And that was Krakow's Dislocated Rooms, a labyrinth of architecture and illusion, where every hinge told a lie and every door decided who returned. Thank you for staying with us through this story, for listening to the slow unraveling of false cities, and for standing with Detective Anya Biel in the echo of those borrowed rooms. If you felt the chill of that corridor, the weight of the crate, or the faint draft behind a door that should have been still, then you've walked with us all the way. Don't forget to subscribe, tap the bell, and leave a like if you want more stories from the hidden corners of the world. Places where truth bends just enough to let the impossible breathe. Because here on Somnolent Conspiracies, we believe every shadow has a story, and we'll be the ones to tell it.